Welcome to the Antoy Show Survive and Thrive series, where you get information you can use to transform your life and business during coronavirus and beyond.
This is part 2 of a series for Mental Health Awareness Month. We will air one episode per week. Today's episode is Fear, Stress, and Coronavirus.
Welcome to the show, you guys.
Thank you.
How are you guys all doing today? Let's start by introducing yourselves to everyone.
My name is Angel Moore. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and I am the owner of a Moore's Counseling Service, where we're here to help those with any mental challenges that they may have.
All right.
My name is Dr. Clinton Bullock, and I am the CEO and founder of Clinton Bullock Coaching. And I am a life coach, and I assist people in fulfilling their dreams and their goals. And I assist people in pushing their life ahead so that they may live a successfully professional and personal life.
Oh, awesome.
Hello, my name is Carrie Laylor. I'm a licensed professional counselor and certified anger management specialist. I am the owner of Agape Transformation Practice. We are a mental health and wellness center in Decatur, Georgia, and we work with the high achieving women who are juggling lots of plates and trying to make the world a better place in their own right, and don't find the time to really take care of themselves or to receive the support that they really need. So we allow them to come into our office or into our space and take off the masks so that they can really focus on themselves and get everything that they need.
Well, I'm so excited today to talk about how coronavirus is affecting us. When coronavirus first started, I just remember, I heard about it starting, upstate New York. There's like one person that had it. And by the end of the week, there was, I think, like 300 people that had it. And it just kept going and going. No one knew it was happening at that time. So on the onset of coronavirus, people were experiencing a whole lot of fear. Can you guys talk a little bit about that?
They were fearful of a lot of things, like Carrie hit on, like, will I have enough food? I don't have a good job as it is, and I lost my job. So how am I going to supply the needs that I have for my children and for, just for everyday living? And will I lose my job? Some people were fearful that they won't have anything. You're watching the news all day, every day. So of course you're going to be fearful. And some of my clients, I just had to say, make sure you don't spend all your days, all day, watching the news, because the fear was so fierce. And they was just worried about everything. They was like, well, what if no one makes it? It just brought on so much for them. You're thinking about the future. What's going to happen? The fear was real.
With my clients, it was a very common theme was that a lot of them would spend a lot of time on social media. That was a problem. There were people who stayed at home and I guess gained weight. And there are people who took this time to go out and for runs and so forth. So it's about where you put that energy. Definitely a lot of my clients were spending a lot of time on social media. What's happening? I have to know the latest thing or what's happening. And that creates stress and anxiety again, and so much. So it was just this cycle of, I want to be informed, yet the information I'm getting is stressing me. There were people spending 8 hours a day plus, like just focused on what's happening. Because again, if they got laid off, they were stressed. They wanted to know when they could go back to work. A lot of these things. So I said, limit it to 30 minutes a day. When you want to start your day, you want to know what's happening and so forth. But after that, let it go, leave it alone, and do other things that are more constructive to our own well-being. You can check back in tomorrow. I promise you, nothing will change routine today and tomorrow. That's huge. But the thing is, it's that energy that's really needs to be redirected towards something positive, and that feeds our positive psychological state.
People watch certain news programs and they keep it on 24/7,
Yes.
and that creates a lot of fear. And especially in the initial onset of it, there wasn't clear information, and there was misinformation. There was a lot of unknown. So that created, I think, a lot of it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And I think specifically for Black and Brown people, we have a automatic distrust of government, people in power. And so there was so much confusion as to whether or not this virus was real, that there was really a problem, or whether it wasn't, that we really need to wear masks or not. All of that stuff, all of that confusion made it even worse because we didn't really know what to believe when we already have a strong distrust of people in power and politics and so forth. So that was a factor. And then a lot of people just even struggled with accepting that this virus was real. It took a minute. I was one of those people who took a minute for it to get real for me because I don't watch the news. And so it wasn't really until my daughter's school closed down, they were just kind of like, we're shutting down school. And I was like, what? Shutting down school? What's going on? Like, stop playing. So, and then people were talking about, getting food. And it was just kind of like, are you serious? Like, we're okay. What are you talking about? And then in Georgia, people were buying up guns. So it's just like all of these things are going on. And in my mind in particular, I was just kind of like, okay, they're really serious about this. Like, okay, I guess I really need to begin to accept these things that's to come. So it was that as well that made things difficult, not knowing who to trust, what to trust. And then the isolation piece of it, I think, is really huge. When I spoke to my clients, I emphasize connecting with others, having a circle, having camaraderie, community is really important, because when you disconnect from the news and social media, which is already a drug, who do you go to? Who do you turn to? Family's not always warm and fuzzy. So your new family, turning to them, talking with them, connecting with them as often as possible to just kind of disconnect from the craziness of the world. And then for people who were already in unhealthy relationships in quarantine, within these unhealthy relationships, it added to the fear. So now you're dealing with your child, and if your child had developmental issues or problems in school or things that you've overlooked over the years, now it's all in your face, not just for 2 months like the summer, but it's there, and you have to teach them as well. The fear, it felt like it just incubated and just got worse and suffocated so many people. And the uncertainty of all of it just made it feel kind of hopeless. So when I talk about the grief that we felt, like the mass grief that we felt, and when you look at grief, you recognize that there's the shock of like, what's going on? Is this really happening? And then having to accept, like begin to slowly accept, but in the midst of accepting, there's anger and there's bargaining, there's all these things that are going on. So when we think about children, parenting children, we are taught to communicate with them as much as possible, to let them know what's going on so that their anxiety is decreased. So the more they know, the more comfortable they can feel, and the less kind of tantruming and all of that stuff that happens because they're more calm. Well, if we think of the government, if you will, as like the parents, the parenting figure, and the people are the family or the children, with all of the confusion that was going on, we didn't know what to believe. And so it's just kind of like this, with this mass confusion and not knowing what's going on and the distrust, it just made everything really chaotic. And then to be stuck inside the home was just, we had nothing but fear and hopelessness.
Yeah. People wasn't going to the doctor because they was fearful of going to the doctors being out. I know I had to have surgery during this, during the coronavirus, and I would be lying if I didn't tell you that I wasn't fearful, because I'm like, well, okay, I'm in surgery, I'm all open, you know, what's gonna happen? And if, to be honest, if I wasn't in so much pain like I was, I wouldn't have had it. I just wouldn't have done it. But I really needed it. And so I just had to just put my trust in God.
Fear is a natural response. It's what keeps us, helps us survive in those situations, you know. So when does it cross the line in being an unhealthy response?
If it cripples you from functioning in your day-to-day life, that's when you know that is too much. It cannot cripple you. It should not.
People that have experienced fear throughout this process or are still experiencing, because they're still going on in a different way, what are some ways that they can manage or cope with that fear response?
I try to get my clients definitely look, whatever, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, but we're specific to this. What are the statistics showing? What are they showing? Now, I know that they show definitely on television and how many people have died, but the actual rate on recovery is 99.96%. I was a journalist and as well, we have this motto that says, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's why it's not good to be constantly on the news, social media, because no one tells you that. It's a psychological play here. If they did the opposite, right, about people who had COVID and survived, Dr. Clinton Bullock survived today, and every single day, the thousands of people who had it and they lived, which would totally outpace those who actually died. If we had a different spin on it, then I think that our psychological state in the United States would be way better, way different. I did get COVID, but I did say constantly, there's more of a possibility of me getting into a car accident and dying in Los Angeles today than COVID and dying of COVID, or getting struck by lightning, or all these other things that would happen to us. Through my studies, it's very unfortunate that statistics don't make people feel any better, because because we're very emotional beings. And again, going back to how it's displayed on the media and social media and news, that this person died, this person, we're up to this numbers. Well, we've had millions of billions, I don't know how many people have actually had COVID in total, but to be able to recover. And I think that's a really good thing. So I just try to get people to concentrate on what the actual facts of the situation are, and hopefully that makes certain people feel better.
Yeah, that's something I always wondered, because when I looked at the numbers, how they have it on the screen, and the number of people that they said, you know, had it, and then the number that died, when I looked at the percentages, I was like, majority of the people are surviving. But as you said, Dr. Bullock, you know, it bleeds, it leads. So if you can create, you know, go with the negative, you know, narrative, because that's what people are going to be, you know, focused on. And it doesn't help our mental health to really see that or hear that consistently.
Exactly, 100%.
With my clients, I encourage them to focus on the good, right? Exactly what Dr. Bullock was talking about. And so when we look at our lives, what are the things that you're wanting to maximize in your life? Yes, all of the stuff is going on around us, and yes, there's lots of uncertainty, but what is certain in your life? What do you want? Like, what are your desires? So you're able to spend more time with your family. How can we change that to be a good thing? Able to spend quality time, getting closer. So let's focus on those things. You have more time. You're not rushing to do all of these things. It's not the pressure that it was before, that you had before, when you had to commute to work and deal with traffic and all of these things and all the roles you have to play. All of those things have been limited. And how do you want to take advantage of the time that you now have? Before COVID, people talked about, oh, I just need to slow down, need to slow down, need to slow down. Well, now you have the opportunity to slow down. Prayers answered. Here you go. What are you going to do with this gift? So I encourage people to do the things that they wanted to do. They liked art. They liked walking in nature. They like doing these things. Well, now's the time to do it. You want to teach your child creative, fun things, play games. You wanted to improve your home in some way, paint, all of these things. Let's do the things that we've always wanted to do. Let's be creative with it and just create the fun and the joy that you're wanting in your life.
Focus on the positivity and the benefits and the silver lining in the situation versus the fear of everything going on.
Right. And maximize that.
Right.
So Angel, you mentioned earlier stress. Let's talk about the factors that cause stress during this coronavirus.
Working from home is one of them. And because they have to now create a workspace. And think about creating a workspace that's not conducive for work. So you at home, the children being home. For those with OCD, and everybody's working on the dining room table or something, and the clutter is just driving them mad, is stressing them out. And maybe the doorbell ringing while you on a Zoom call, so they thinking about all this is stressing them out. And if it happens, a dog barking, kids crying, Amazon delivery, because now everybody's ordering everything. COVID brought on a lot of stresses. That's just from working from home. That's just that, working from home and the children. That's enough right there. That just was like, what is happening? I can't deal with this. I can't work from home. And the children asking me question, or their alarms going off, the parents' alarm, because now the children have to move to a different class now, so the stress was real.
The parents have to become teachers and have to know all these
Yes.
subjects, and you don't want to be looking crazy in front of your child. Like, I don't know what 1 + 1 is, but,
Right.
They literally have to suddenly
Right.
go back to a schooling mentality and deal with working from home and all of that, your whole safe space, which is your home, it's supposed to be the Zen, everything else is outside, school and, work is outside. It's now like all there with you,
Well, I don't think it was just the working at home. Again, like you mentioned, Angel, it's the working at home with the kids at home. I think that was the biggest piece right there. I mean, we can work from home, no problem. We'll give you some coffee. We're
Right.
good. We're home. And then, it's like, mommy's like, I got work to do. Just like, and then, can you help me with my, with this? Can you help me with that? Can you help me with my schoolwork? I think the combination was disastrous. The other piece was, if you have parents who actually still had to go out to work while the kid had to stay home. So now what you're going to do with your little 8-year-old, 7-year-old, who actually has to stay home, but the other two parents have to still go out because perhaps they're essential workers or what have you. Who's going to watch the kid? They don't talk about the negative effects of the quarantine. They don't talk about that, which has done more damage, in my controversial view, than COVID has done by itself. The quarantine by itself damaged so many people with regard to the beyond finances, psychologically, and how we're going to cope, and which will have an effect way beyond 2020.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you, Dr. Bullock. And even from this perspective, we had to deal with our stuff. Mm-hmm. So all of the coping mechanisms we had before to go out, to forget everything, mm-hmm. Now we didn't have those coping mechanisms. So we had to really sit in and deal with everything that was going on, mm-hmm. which is hard. To not have the outlets that you had before, to not be able to just like laugh joy and just kind of like let loose and get that out of the way, really made it stressful for a lot of people. On top of the financial piece of it, the reality that, oh man, my financial house is not in order. I don't have my emergency fund anymore. I don't have a savings buildup. Oh my gosh, what if I lose my job? For people who have a tendency to procrastinate with the things that they don't love to do, whether that be estate planning, whether that be filling out applications for the PPP loan, the EDIL, like all of that is now in your face. And who wants to deal with it? Stress.
Yeah. And you mentioned financial, because I remember, on the onset of it, they said, oh, you'll be off for 2 weeks, which people are like, okay, 2 weeks, we could do 2 weeks. But then it wasn't 2 weeks, I have friends in California that are still, furloughed, and, it's been a year. And so let's talk a little bit about that financial uncertainty and insecurity and how that related to the stress.
Heavily. I mean, that's the number one reason people actually get divorced. Again, there's direct correlation between finances and suicide. There's a lot of, and then when you are not even expecting it, no one expected this. And it was a big crash, and now you lose your job. And sometimes both families, both the parents who lost their job. So that's really hard. One of the things that people also don't talk about is, again, the effects of that. Now what do we do? Because it's not like, oh, people are hiring now. And there was a lot of stress that goes into these unfortunate situations. I tell people under normal circumstances, hey, do things you love to do, meditate. You can't meditate money into your bank account. Like you can't do that. So
if I could, I'd be a billionaire right now.
So it was terribly, terribly difficult. And to which even us who have strategies and skills to be able to advance your life and to push your life forward, a lot of those things, perhaps 80 to 90% went out the window. Because when people are coming, it's like, what do I do? I don't have a job. She doesn't have a job. Kids are home. I have to help them with schoolwork. This prevents us from actually looking for jobs because all day we're helping our children, depending on how many children you have, with their schoolwork. It was an absolute, through lack of a better word, mess last year.
And the compound levels of things is what created like an even more stress, because normally if someone loses a job or they're furloughed or laid off or whatever, you can go find a new job. In this case, people weren't hiring, or, it was just a total shutdown all around. So like you said, the normal things that you would do to fix whatever is happening, you aren't able to do that. So that created a higher level of stress.
Right.
Exactly.
And then we didn't even talk about the small business owners who had to figure out how they were going to try to keep their employees, whoever they could, or even the furlough process, how they wanted to do that, and how they were going to get money. So it was all of these things that we were juggling, just trying to figure out how we are going to take care of our family and the family of our employees during this shutdown. Stress, yes.
The financial stress really, really did a number on people's psyche, where they became depressed because of that financial stress, and they thought they was doing the right things. They tell you have at least 6 months worth of income, so if you lose your job, and they had that and it was gone in less than 6 months. So, that it really sent them into a spiral and into depression.
And most people don't even have that. Most people don't have a month saved. Most people work from check to check. This can also, after the fact, can get us to see how vulnerable we really are in so many ways. One of the biggest ways is financially, because you never know what's going to happen in life. So you have to prepare accordingly. And people just say that. People, you just have to prepare. Oh, okay, it'll come just like anything else. But when you really need it, you just never know. These types of situations, it's just very difficult. But if we don't take the time to establish out a plan beforehand, which is basically everyone should have a nest egg, but most people don't. Most people work from check to check. And this is one of the definitely perennial issues in the United States.
Can we address a little bit about what our essential workers were experiencing during this time?
The frontline workers, they really, really went through it, and they were scared that now what's going to happen to me and my family.
The things that I heard were that they were ill-equipped in terms of having the supplies that they needed, and how they were at risk in trying to serve the patients, and how stressful that was for them. In addition to just the inequality that occurs with the races, knowing that people were getting preferential treatments, that was angering for them. And even the shifts that they worked, recognizing that they too were being treated differently in terms of how long they were on shift, and who they were serving as far as patients were concerned, how many they were overloaded with the patients that they were serving, whereas they should typically have one or three at max. They had five, and these are patients that are critical. So having all of that stress and knowledge on them and feeling like they were not valued because they didn't have what they needed, that took a huge toll on them, because their love for serving people, they're pushing and sacrificing themselves and their families in ways to make sure that they're the superheroes, essentially, working to help change the things that are going on in the hospital and save as many lives as possible. It's ridiculous the amount of stress that they were under.
People that go into nursing, or they become doctors, or they go into the medical field, there's a passion to really help people. When it first began, they didn't even have masks. They didn't have N95 masks. They didn't have their, protective gear that they needed, but they would still go and do their jobs. And I'm impressed by the commitment, because that's life and death. Like, if you don't have the proper PPE, you're walking into that patient's room, and you're putting your life in your hands. Their passion to help and people overrides the stress and the fear and anxiety and whatever else they're feeling, going in there. And I definitely think our healthcare and our essential workers are people that will need some mental health, assistance in the future.
And think about the grocery store clerk. When I would go in there, I would always thank them, because if they didn't work, I couldn't get groceries because the store would be closed. So even them, the essential workers, they was very essential.
I really, again, place the spotlight on those who serve us. I was in the military, and I just think that, there are people in our world, and although it might sound controversial during these days, I put cops in there as well. I mean, no matter who you are, you walk out on the street every day, you may not come home. Nurses and doctors and people who are just there to serve us, and they don't have to do, obviously there's other professions that they can do. They know the risks, obviously, but I applaud them. I want to give them a standing ovation, or whatever, the whole thing, because they basically assisted in an area that not a lot of people didn't choose to go into for certain specific reasons. It takes a certain type of person to be a doctor or a nurse or a police officer, going to the military, what have you. And these are the people definitely literally on the front lines to make sure that we have a safe country in one way or another. So my hat goes off to all of them. It really does.
Firemen, they'll run into the burning building while everyone's running out. It's kind of like, it takes a lot to be able to do that. Just like when the soldiers come home and they see them in their uniform in the airport, if you see them in their scrubs, don't run the other way from your social distancing. Just tell them you're doing an amazing job. You guys have been awesome. Let the audience know where they can find out more about you guys.
They can find me on Amore's Counseling Services.com, and if they need to reach out, I'm available for you.
ClintonBullock.com, or at Coach Clinton Bullock, at Coach Clinton Bullock on Instagram.
You can always go online at agapetransformation.com and get all of our information. We also have a Facebook page, which is Agape Transformation.
Thank you guys so much for coming on the show today and sharing so much information. It was great to kind of reflect on the journey we've been on with this coronavirus and how it's affected us. And it's, I know it's going to really help a lot of people to get the information for you guys. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is part 2 of the series for Mental Health Awareness Month. Catch the other episodes.
If you're experiencing anything we talked about today, please reach out for help. You don't have to face this alone. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw on this episode, make sure you share it with everyone. And if you want more inspiring content, go to youtube.com/The Antoy Show, mangoseed.tv, and antoygrant.com. See you guys soon.